My name is Richard August, and I'll be your host. Our guest is Jim Lathrop. He is the finance director of the town of North Kingstown and is the Republican candidate for general treasurer of the state of Rhode Island. Welcome to State of the State.
Well, thank you for having me.
First, Jim, you are a newcomer to the statewide political scene. Why don't you start by telling the audience about yourself, your family, educational background, and maybe most importantly, what qualifies you to be general treasurer of the state of Rhode Island with a responsibility for a $10, $12 billion pension fund?
So I went to Bryant University. Eventually I met a Rhode Island girl. So I'm originally from Connecticut. I've been in Rhode Island about 20 years now. I'm a CPA. I had a practice in Connecticut, 2 offices. Had a chance to sell it and had a friend who worked in government and introduced me to it, and I got into government finance. I started in Hopkinton, Rhode Island. I've been to a couple different communities, and that's what I do. You know, we've been very successful. I've always built great teams around me, and you know, a couple years ago, Providence Business News CFO of the Year, RIPAC's Goodrich recipient for some of the work for taxpayers, and being self-employed, I really understand the value of money. I know how hard it is to get it and how hard it is to keep it. And I decided to run because I was concerned that the treasurer's office was just becoming a political office, a resume builder. And as you said, there's billions of dollars in the pension, and you need someone with the technical skills because it's my money. And I worry about my money, and if I'm going to worry, I might as well step up.
You also have a degree in public administration?
Yep, so a little later in my career, I went to NYU. I have a master's in public administration. Public leadership was my concentration. I get up every morning on Saturday at 3 a.m., drive to New Haven to get the train. I would go to classes on weekends. It took me a little longer, but it was a great experience, and it brought a different perspective, I think, to a lot of the work that I do, not just about the numbers, but what it can do to help the communities. And it was a good opportunity for me, and I try to apply it towards work.
Is this your first run for elective office?
I did run for town council in South Kingstown a while back. It was during COVID, so there was no real campaigning. I was the only Republican. South Kingstown hasn't elected a Republican. Now I think it's going on 20 years. I did pretty well, but it was part of the idea to understand what this process is, because doing the job is I'm finding much difficult than campaigning. I know I'm going to be a great treasurer. I'm not always a great politician. It's hard to ask for people's money or interrupt them while they're eating to explain myself. I tend to be a private person, so I understand that, but I'm getting better.
Would you use this office as a stepping stone? You said earlier something about the general treasurer's office has become a resume builder. Do you have aspirations beyond this?
I don't, and at my age, if I can do 8 years, that would be a good time to retire. You know, I aspire to this job. I don't aspire to anything else. And plus, my wife has made it very clear, if I run for anything else, there's going to be a big discussion to have. So I love my wife, and yeah.
Now, in the spirit of full disclosure, I am the chairman of the North Kingstown Audit Committee and have fairly frequent contact with Director Lathrop. The town's financials, audited by an independent CPA firm, and our comprehensive annual financial report have won awards. So if elected, you will be leaving the town in fairly good financial shape. How do you think your municipal finance success translates to the office of General Treasurer?
I think one of the big things that the General Treasurer has besides the pension is to manage the state's cash flow. You know, prior to COVID, you know, there was rumors, and I deal with their staff on a regular basis, that they were concerned about having cash flow issues. And a lot of towns do that, and we have mechanisms where we can borrow money, which the state treasurer's office doesn't have right now. So I think that would be something that I'd bring to the governor and the legislature, saying, It's not that we're going to borrow money, but if we have a short term because tax collections are slow or something else happens, it gives us some access. And the pensions that we manage are for a lot of municipal employees. In North Kingstown, I've actually had them come down. I think you need to be more proactive. People, are just working and they don't know how their money's invested and what options that they have. Dealing with people on a day-to-day basis is different. I'm a regular guy. I cut my own lawn. I like doing that stuff. And I think that's what I'll bring to the Treasurer's office from that municipal experience.
On July 15th, you signed a transparency pledge, which reads, and I quote, "As candidates for Rhode Island State Treasurer, we believe that the faith and trust in our government and elected officials starts with a commitment to open and transparent disclosures of the state's investments and agreements with consultants and advisors of such assets. Public pension funds have undergone significant changes in accountability, funding, structure, reporting, and investing. The past decades have seen public pension funds chasing higher returns and shifting from the traditional investments in stocks and bonds. Investments now include significant holdings in alternative investments, such as hedge funds, private equity, and real estate. This type of investing creates higher volatility and increases the need for full transparency. Many say they believe in transparency and make pledges to be more transparent, but we, the undersigned, declare we are committed to full transparency, defined as follows. All agreements with consultants and advisors will be made public in their entirety. This will include fees, commitments of funds, restrictions of funds, and how assets will be valued. All investments will be identified individually and reported as such. Reporting will include cost, value, how valued, and percentage ownership of the investment. We further pledge that no investments will be held in offshore or Cayman Island accounts." Now, you signed this on July 15th. Have any of the other two Democrats who will be running in the primary, have they signed this pledge?
They have not. They have said they will not. So
they've actually said.
Forbes magazine picked this up, so they went out and publicized it, and the Democrats would not sign it. And I think this is, especially in these times, and as I look at what we hold, less than a third is in the traditional investments of stocks and bonds. And again, I go back to the saying of why I'm running. This is my pension money. I want to know where you put it. One of the Phoenix pension funds actually owns a soccer team. We've got Tidewater, which is going to be a problem. Is our pension fund going to start investing in those type of assets? Or years ago, we did the American Express building that really turned into a problem where we lost quite a bit of money.
Which building was that? The one in Providence?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, Gina Raimondo with the hedge funds is understanding how the fee structures work and what kind of commitment, how can we get our money back. I think it's very important. And, even in North Kingstown, my job, we print online every single check that we issue other than a payroll check. So if someone wants to call me up and says, why was this, $42 spent at Socrates Pizza, I can tell you, oh, the rec department had a program and that's where they got the pizzas. If you have nothing to hide, show your hand, and that's what I would like to do.
So you really think it's necessary for candidates, especially for General Treasurer, to sign this?
I do, because it defines what transparency is. A lot of people will say, I believe in transparency. Well, for the treasurers, here's exactly what it is. We're going to give you the investment contracts. We're going to tell you what we invest in. We're going to tell you how we value it. And we're going to tell you everything about those investments. In a way, if we're doing a good job, people may want to mirror what we're doing. I look at investments from, Warren Buffett and all those. I want to know what he invests in.
Is the state pension fund really holding significant assets in hedge funds, private equity, and real estate? Or does this just hark back to the days when Gina Raimondo was general treasurer? And the reason I ask that, Seth Magaziner, as you know, is running for governor. His term limited in the general treasurer's office. He came on this program and proudly exclaimed that a lot of those alternative investments were drawn in, and so.
Yeah, he has what they call a back to basics program, which I think is a start, but untangling the mess is going to take a while. You don't want to just sell because you need to sell it. And again, while we can untangle the investments and make them a little more clear, it still goes to who's getting paid and how much they're getting paid. People want to know, and are we making good choices with our investments?
Are there really pension fund investments held in offshore accounts and in the Cayman Islands?
This was actually, I had a discussion with Mr. Siddell, who's been a big pension advocate, and he does work for Forbes magazines. I don't know for Rhode Island, but there are other states who do use those trading. So we just want to make it very clear that we're not going to use this as an avenue in the future just to hide some of our investments. Again, it's not just what we are doing now, it's what we're going to do in the future. We're not going to say, we didn't say that we're not going to invest in Cayman Island funds, and I wanted to come out very clear saying that's not even something on my radar, and just so that people could be assured.
If you were elected and you found that we had these offshore accounts, would you immediately take action to draw them in and close them out?
Yes. I first would disclose what we have, because again, I don't want to have to sell something that is at a fire sale and would hurt the pension fund, but I would make that disclosure immediately so that everybody knew what it was and explain the plan and how we're going to get out of it over a relatively short period of time.
One of the ways the former General Treasurer, Governor, and now Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo is believed to have returned the pension funds to solvency was to suspend the annual cost of living adjustments, otherwise known as COLAs. And this was and is a real bone of contention with some retirees, many retirees in fact. And again, in the spirit of full disclosure, I do receive a pension from the Municipal Employees Retirement Fund. Director Lathrop, you say you have a plan to bring back COLAs. Please tell us what that plan is.
So one is we don't have a state pension investment. We have a pooled investment, but we have multiple pension plans that are managed by the state, from municipal, from towns. And when you go deeper into them, the four main, the state, the municipal employees, the public safety, and the teachers, the state and the municipal employees are closer to the 80%, while the public safety and the teachers aren't. And then even if you break those down individually. So first of all, just because, and I'm going to use North Kingstown because I work there currently, that we're at 78% for our municipal employees, we could easily get to 80%. Why are they not getting their COLAs? Because RIDE's not funding properly for the teachers. RIDE is Rhode Island Department of Education. I understand we're in it together, but why am I subsidizing a much richer pension plan and you're hurting me? So that would be one, is I would break it down individually. The second is the COLA may not be 100% inflation, it could be a 50%. I think we need to do that. Right now we use a 7% annual return rate, which I think is a good rate, it's a conservative, but consistently the pension funds have operated at a much higher level. I think we could start to move that maybe to 7.25, moving to 7.5 again, which would boost the pension on an actuarial basis and meet those 80% requirements. Just doing a little bit of math, the other thing that the state does is they do what they call a smoothing within their pension plan. So that means that they don't recognize all gains and they don't recognize all losses. So in the state, we have over $300 million of gains that they have not recognized within the pension plan because they're saving it for a rainy day. And I think we could reevaluate how we do that. I mean, on the other end, and it's a little off topic, but Providence. When you look at Providence reports, they have over $100 million of losses that they haven't recognized. So their pension fund is even worse than it looks like. And when we talk about their proposals of borrowing money to get out of it, I'm an old-fashioned Yankee. You cannot borrow yourself into prosperity. You got to work hard and make hard decisions.
No, borrowing just kicks the can down the road, doesn't it?
Exactly.
So one of the things that's been suggested is the Providence Pension Fund, which is really in fairly poor financial shape, be allowed to merge with the state. Do you think that's at all feasible?
Well, I think it's feasible, but I think it goes back to that problem that are they going to drag down the whole fund so that individual plans that are 80%, that they're not going to get a COLA because they've taken on this Providence, and we look at it as a whole picture. I think that would be one of the first things that I would talk about and bring to the governor's attention and the legislature's attention, so that those communities that did everything right, they've been paying their contributions, they've been funding it as accordingly. If they're at 80% or close to, and we can allow them to catch up to get to 80%, at least their retirees get their COLAs.
It's very interesting that you say that the $500 million of unreported or unrealized gains is being saved for a rainy day.
Yeah.
How do you define a rainy day, I guess?
Well, I guess it's when the pension fund underperforms at 7%. So like this last quarter, the state pension lost about $1 billion from what I hear because of the market conditions, that they can use that to offset some of those gains.
I see.
However, that's on an annual basis. We've seen while markets are down, we're starting to see the increase back up. I know the state has a new investment officer who comes from California, the Capers, C-A-L-P-E-R-S fund that manages that. And I've heard a lot of good things, and I guess he moved to Rhode Island and took this job. So again, it's hard to look at a snapshot. You got to look at the bigger picture, and I think that's what I would bring to the proposals.
Does your experience reducing other post-employment benefits, known as OPEBs, in North Kingstown have application to the state and municipal employee retirement package, which in some cases I think includes health costs?
Exactly. So in North Kingstown, when I came, the OPEB liability, which is for the retirement health care benefits, was $27 million. We're now down to $17 million. That's a huge decrease. And we did it by talking to the unions about their pensions. We started contributing a little bit more. We invest that money. We're probably a little bit more on the aggressive side than some of the other communities because, again, we took that long-term view as opposed to a year-to-year basis. And that's something that has not come up in this campaign at all for Treasurer. The state has an over $300 million liability for OPEB, that there's no trust set up, there's no provisions. It's something that no one talks about. It's not the billions that the pension, but it's still $300 million. And as our population continues to grow older and our workforce, it's going to get bigger and bigger. And I think that's something that we address. And one of the things that I would do right away is to start that, what they call an OPEB trust, so that we have a funding mechanism. It was in the ARPA money that the towns and the state received.
ARPA money being the money from the COVID
exactly
funds.
So they had restrictions on how it can be used. You can't use it for pensions, but you can use it for OPEB contribution. So in North Kingstown, in order to reduce some of our taxes, we're using partially some of the ARPA money to fund the OPEB, and we have a plan over the next couple of years to do that. I think the state could have, with the surpluses that they ran and the amount of cash that they have from it, that would have been a great use, and take it right off the books for the state and save the taxpayers some money instead of the pay-go system that we use now.
Could you use, this is a technical problem, and I really don't want our audience to get confused with some of this terminology we're using, but this is an important part of the General Treasurer's job. Could you use the $500 million rainy day fund to offset the $300 million of OPEB?
No, you can't, because that's a pension money, and it's really geared, it's money earned by the pensioners. It's just that we haven't recognized it. And I said in the beginning why I'm running, and I think you just confirmed it. This is a very technical job. You know, you need someone who's been doing this for decades, which I have, and have been doing it successful. It's not on-the-job training. It's not another commerce job that you're out making deals. It's about the work. It's about reconciling the state's bank accounts. It's about managing the pension funds and the cash flow and a few of the other programs that they have. You need someone who has a passion for that. And I said, this is the job that for a financial guy like me, you aspire to. This is the top of the mountain.
Do you think the pension fund should divest itself in industries or companies or funds that are thought to be contributing to climate change?
Yeah, I'm very torn on that, and there's been a lot of articles and opinions on it. While I think it's good to have a belief in different social and climate type stuff, but at the end of the day, the pension liability and responsibility is to the pensioners. You know, we're making decisions for them on how they invest their money, and if they're getting a lower yield because we're trying to stop climate control, they don't have any say in that. And there needs to be a mechanism that, do you want to not invest in tobacco companies knowing that it's going to cost you 0.5% per year on your yield on it? I would not personally do it. I think you make investments based on good investments, and then if you get some support from the community who's impacted, then you make those decisions.
Okay. So an energy company like ExxonMobil, for example, you would not exclude that as an investment simply because they're, quote, an energy company, may be contributing to climate change?
No.
Okay. Now, we are taping this program the night before the primary on September 13th, so we don't know who your opponent will be. And today, I received what I call an attack mailer. I don't know if this will come through very well, but this came through telling voters to beware of the carpetbagger candidate for Rhode Island Treasurer, Stefan Pryor. This mailer is paid for, oddly enough, by the NEA Rhode Island, which is the largest teachers union in the state, which probably implies that they're supporting Mayor Diosa for General Treasurer, or perhaps they support your candidate. Do you have any?
No, I've actually met with them, and they're supporting Mr. Diosa. But I also think it's interesting that Mr. Pryor has received funding from the national NEA for some of, because he was an education commissioner in the state of Connecticut.
Yep.
So that, you know, those are issues that I have is in what the treasurer's office has become. You know, they're spending millions and millions of dollars, and most of it is out-of-state money to impact who becomes treasurer. I always ask why. Why are you doing that? What's in it for you? That's not me. I haven't raised that kind of money. I've had, you know, some endorsements from different individuals, but the unions are pretty strong on the Democratic side. And I was just kind of surprised. You know, I met with them, and you know, they were all impressed. I understand the school funding formula. Actually, in my master's program, that was one of my final thesis on how Rhode Island went to a funding formula and how it works and doesn't work. When they talk about housing aid and how, you know, the candidates want to build more schools, the treasurer's office doesn't build schools. We borrow money. But understanding that mechanism and how the towns get some supplement from the state, I think is what I can bring, and because I have that municipal experience, I know how it affects the communities, the decisions that we make.
Do you have a preference as to who you would face in a general election after the primary is tomorrow, but do you have a preference as to what?
I don't. You know, at the end of the day, there'll be a lot of like that negative stuff from stuff, but that's not who I am. You know, I want you to vote for me because I am the best candidate. I have the most skills, I have the most experience, I have the most success, and I'm not going to be here or why you should not vote for somebody else. You know, vote for James Lathrop. I've done a good job. I have a good track record, and I don't have a lot of baggage with me. So I can make decisions that are really for the best of the state and the best for the people.
As a Republican General Treasurer, as you probably would anticipate, you would be dealing with a legislature that's controlled by the Democrats.
Yep.
You're likely, we don't know for sure, but it's likely that the governor will be another Democrat. That may change, of course. But do you think, as a Republican General Treasurer, that you would be able to work with particularly the Finance Committee of the House, which is a very powerful committee and will undoubtedly be headed up by a Democrat?
Well, yes. The treasurer's job is an elected position, but should not be a political position. It's a very technical in nature. I've been dealing with Democrats all my life. I work and live in Rhode Island, and I know a lot of the people who are there. And I think at the end of the day, everybody understands that they want competent people, so that when they talk to me, I can give them the answers. Even in the treasurers, my role is to provide information to the legislators so that they can make good financial decisions.
And in that regard, I was going to point out that the town manager you report to, Ralph Mollis, is a Democrat who was a mayor of North Providence and also was the Secretary of State, a Democrat. Yes. And certainly you feel that you've worked well with him and accomplished a lot for the town. And the town council in North Kingstown has also been pretty much dominated by Democrats. You've had a good working relationship with them as well?
I have. Even running for office, you know, I talked to them about what my plans were, and they were very supportive. You know, they know that I'm taking a leave of absence and some time off, but they've also, as they said, we wish you success, but we also wish you failure so that you come back, which I thought was the nicest way to say stuff that, you know, regardless, we still want you.
Sort of a left-handed compliment.
Yeah, but I'll take it, you
Yeah.
know? So,
In the other towns that you said you were finance director, I believe, and you were in Westerly and...
Yep, so in Westerly, they hired me to consolidate the town and the school. We were the first to do that. We eliminated 4.5 positions, but we did it through attrition. Never fired anybody, just as they retired out. We didn't need to backfill them. I was in Portsmouth. We got AAA rating there. We were the second community in Rhode Island to get AAA rating. We did one of the first true public-private partnerships. We owned a campground that we leased out for some capital, and instead of breaking even, we started making money, and that's how we paid for a rec department. I said I've been Westerly, Hopkinton, the city of New London, a much larger community in Connecticut, and a very brief stay over at Block Island.
Well, we've got about a minute left, and one question I haven't asked yet. Will you come on after the primary and debate whichever Democrat
you know,
is
I've
your
been trying to
opponent?
get into debates that they've been having. You know, there's only 3 of us. It's not like there's 12 like on the governor's part. I look forward to that opportunity, and I think that's where you'll really see the difference between me and either of the Democratic candidates that really are politicians. And it depends on what you want. If you're happy with how things are and you think life is better, stay with what you got. But I know my life and people I talk to aren't better from 5 years ago. I think it's time for change.
Well, thank you for joining us. And I want to thank the audience for tuning into this edition of State of the State. We wish you the best of luck on the campaign trail. And we do look forward to having you come back and debate your Democrat opponent.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
And thank you, audience, for watching State of the State.